Hey YouTube, in this video we walk through a new app called infranodus. It's really cool to compare sitemaps and to get a visual representation of content as well. So you could use this to load up the sitemap of a competitor, which is what we're doing here. I've shown that in this spreadsheet. So we've turned the URLs into actual text with correct spelling and uppercase capitalization as well, because machines need that in order to understand what certain entities are. For example, if you spell Sydney here in lowercase, a machine might have trouble to actually extract that this is the city called Sydney. All right, cool. So now that we have one competitor's sitemap here, this website is called AdWords and then the other one is called Blackwood. We can load them into infranodus. And what this allows us to do then is to look at the difference of what these sitemaps entail. So here you can see that only the different concepts are displayed. And if I click specifically on separation, we can see that the sitemap that is in AdWords, which is a Sydney law firm, but does not appear in Blackwood, is Sydney, for example. That makes sense, right? Because this firm is located in Sydney and the other one is not. But also the topic of separation is connected to the topic of superannuation. And this now highlights something which is a lack in the other sitemap, because they have not talked about superannuation in the context of separation. So if we type in here on Blackwood and we type separation, they only have a general page and where the other ones. Yeah, it's actually just 2 pages on the topic of separation. And again, they have not connected it to superannuation, which are basically your retirement funds in Australia for anybody outside of Australia. So that's super powerful, right? Because we can now load up our sitemap, compare that to a competitor, and ask infranodus to let us show us the difference. So I'll show you how you can work this tool to do that. You click here on the top left to create a graph. Let's just call this test. And then you can either just click here on analyze text. Then you can copy and paste the text from the sitemap. For example, this in here, copy and paste and hit save. Or you can click on import data, which then also allows you to import a PDF, a spreadsheet, or other types of other data types. I've been using a tool called UPDF to actually turn PDFs into text files, because this tool here has a 3 megabyte upload limit, so you want actually small files if possible. So use UPDF and then use the export function to turn it into text. And I've been doing some interesting stuff there, where I've taken the whole Corporations Act in Australia, which is a legal document or framework for how companies need to operate in Australia. And then I've taken specific sections that I'm interested in, turned them into text and loaded them up into this tool to see what topics are actually discussed quite a lot in the law framework. But back to the comparison here. So now that you know how you can import and create the graph, all the other settings you can leave the same. Once you have your graph, it appears on the left-hand side here. Then you can click on, for example, Blackwood, which is our Melbourne law firm. And you can now see just the graph from Blackwood. You can see that separation is not particularly big here. You can also explore the topics on the left side. So you can see separation is quite a small topic on their sitemap. It's called 0% here. And if we switch to the other sitemap, I think they could make this a bit easier to switch back and forth. That's not too bad. So we switch to the other sitemap. We can see here that separation is a much bigger topic and much better connected. And now, why should you even care how this graph looks and what topics you're discussing? Well, Google is running the exact same analysis for your website. And we're running this just on the page titles essentially, but Google would be running this on every single word on your website inside of the text. However, to do that yourself, it's quite complicated because you would need to crawl every single website of your competitor or web page, grab all of the text, and then load all of that into this tool here. So using just the sitemap is actually a really handy way to get a broad level overview of what topics are missing on your website. But I'm definitely interested in exploring the other method further to scrape all of the content as well. It would give deeper insights, but the tool gets quite slow too once you load up a lot. All right, so now how do we do that comparison? Because right now we're only looking at either the AdWords or Blackwood sitemap. You can see on the top left here, compare different text graphs. So we click that, and then we click on the differs from, and then now here we select the specific map. I wanted to actually do the opposite here. I want to now look at Blackwood and then see what AdWords has that Blackwood doesn't. So now if we say AdWords differs from, visualize that. Okay, so what's in AdWords but not in Blackwood? I wanted to do the opposite here. Let's see if that's possible. Because we already have this. All right, this is different now. Now it's what topics are in Blackwood but not in AdWords. So we can see here there is a case, Mason versus Para probably. This is probably a law case that was discussed in the Blackwood sitemap that the other one doesn't. And then live age. Looks like they're talking about the age of people living together maybe, which is a missing factor. Some maintenance topics. Legal advice. This here makes sense, right? Because Melbourne would not be something that the other website discusses because it's located in Sydney. So you can see this works really well actually to grab out the different topics. And these sitemaps are rather small. There are some really cool websites to do this for, like if you're in the yoga space, there are some yoga websites that have 400 pages. So loading up all of their page titles and comparing that to your yoga sitemap, super powerful stuff. All right, Richmond is another suburb. So overall, we could definitely say that the Blackwood sitemap is a lot weaker because just things like update and is are topics that they have, but they're not really relevant to law. The other way around, when we look at the AdWords sitemap, that's a lot stronger. So here we can see, even just visually without comparing that, just looking at that, they've managed to include Sydney a lot. And then it's about connecting the concept of Sydney, this is for local SEO, to the topics that you want to rank for. And we can look at how AdWords has actually done that. So if you click here on just Sydney, now it highlights everything that it has been connected to. So Sydney North is a specific suburb, I believe. Then Sydney has been connected to divorce, to the fees that people would pay in Sydney, to family, to lawyer, to separation, to abduction, and to children. So this has all been done through the page titles. Let's find out how this looks like in the page title. Let's say Sydney to child. We're looking at AdWords here. I was in the wrong sitemap. Okay, here for example Sydney and then international child abduction. So potentially if they have that in every page title, then that could be a way how they've at least made an association there. Okay, here where they've connected Sydney and parenting. This is all taken from their URLs. Okay, here we can see inside of the URL it says Sydney parenting orders, and then also they have children inside of that URL. So super interesting to jump into that and see how a machine would actually extract your page titles or URLs, and what a machine would take away from those, and what connections there are. We don't know exactly how deep Google goes into building out basically a graph-like structure like this, but it could certainly be possible that in order to save resources, that Google is looking quite a lot at your page titles and URLs in order to understand what the main topics are that you're covering, instead of calculating a graph for every sentence and every topic. Most likely, depending on how relevant your website is, the more resources Google will spend on it. But yeah, I thought I'd show you that. And to finish off, we can look at the Blackwood sitemap in comparison. So we see a lot less connections there. The topic of family and law is well connected in there, and then parenting orders, they're also quite well connected. Property has also been connected to that, and then settlements. So these are the main topics that just through thinking in our topical map course we have already discussed and come up with. But we can also see now that the Mason seems to be a case, Mason versus Parsons, which appears to be connected to parenting somehow. So that's something to look into, how we can integrate that into our sitemap, because we don't have that case yet. All right, I hope this was helpful and a really cool, completely new tool that you can check out at infranodus.com. I'm not associated with them, but I would try to have their founder on this channel to explain a bit more how we can use infranodus to explore topics and sitemaps. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.